So this year I would like to learn the Sicilian as answer to pawn e4. Generally the Sicilian obviously starts with c5, and I will start to study the Rossolimo with 4 knight c3, and this is the fourth line to learn. So after 9f3, knight c6, bishop b5. This is the Rossolimo. It has an excellent reputation because white brings out a piece and prepare to castle as quickly as possible. Very often the follow-up is c3 and d4, attempting to set up a big pawn center. Black must know how to fight that and at the same time bring the king to safety. The task should not be underestimated. The most popular continuations here are g6 and e6. But the move that I'm going to learn is knight f6. Okay, so bringing out a piece and attacking the e-pawn. In this case, white does not have the time to build up with c3 and d4. There are two main responses. One is knight c3, that is the most popular, and the other is e5. And these two moves often can transpose into each other. So let's see, after knight f6, we have, okay, just a second, knight f6, attacking the pawn e4, okay? So one should obviously watch model games to better understand what are the differences between the two. That's the important part, okay? Okay, let's start with knight c3. This is the most sensible move. The knight defends the e-pawn. However, notice that white is now unable to build a pawn center with c3 and d4. In that sense, black has already achieved something. Now, we have also another move that we didn't consider before. Bishop takes c6, because also this line can transpose into lines that are seen later, like d takes c6, d3, g6, knight c3, for example. And the line here could be the same, like and transpose, okay? So after this move, knight c3, the most popular is this. But the move considered now is knight d4. Or, again, g6. That is the real move that I should learn. If black manages to fianchetto the bishop and get castle, the opening will have been concluded satisfactorily. White must cause some disruption. There are basically two ways to play: advance with e5 or don't advance. So the main continuation are obviously e5 or bishop takes c6. That's why we were speaking of transposition. And h3, it's also a way because it's a way to wait and see what black does. So this is also interesting. And then, of course, there is 5 castle, bishop g7, and also this should transpose in one of the other line. So let's go back. E5, the most direct move, attempting to disrupt black smooth development. We should pay attention to this continuation. Knight g4. Pawn on e5 is threatened, so white must decide what to do. And obviously what it does is this bishop takes c6. But there was also the possibility to play this queen e2, bishop g7, and now white still has to play bishop takes d6. And then, of course, after this, we still have a transposition. Okay? So let's return back. Bishop took d6, d takes d6. So this is the part. How do we remember which of the two pawns to take with? Because in most cases, when white exchanges the bishop for the knight on c6, black should recapture with a d pawn. The bishop on c8 needs to come into play. Okay. So next move is h3, knight h6, and here it shows with the arrows where the knight should try to go. Obviously is not placed well on h6. And let's see, d3, now it's attacking the knight h6, bishop g7, and of course white still has a lot of different options, because for example there could be also knight g4, but it could still transpose in some of the position with castling, rook e1, the rook belongs here, and it's the most flexible move. Knight f5, the knight adds to the outpost on d4. Also, this is a maneuver that we can find over and over, so that's why one should watch some thematic game to see these possible maneuvers. Knight e4, this is the most common move. Another move played is bishop f4, to which follows knight d4, knight e4, and b6. And also this is a transposition. So knight e4, b6. Here there are 4 different moves white can play, because they represent different way to play this position. c3 is one, b3 is another, bishop f4 is another again, and e4 is the last move that could be played by white. So at this point it's necessary, obviously, to have a database and look some of the top games to get a feeling of how the opening is played. So let's start with 12 bishop f4, knight d4, and knight takes d4, queen takes d4, c3, because in this way white is protecting the pawn e5, but black obviously doesn't go very away. Queen d5, d4, c takes d4, c takes d4, and now what should black play? Well, black will play rook d8, and this is the end of the line. Okay, black has pressure on the d4 pawn and is already doing fine. Notice how the queen stands well on a light square in the middle of a board. White exchanged off that crucial bishop a long time ago.